Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Crucible of Storms, the short, small, two-boss raid that is coming after Battle for Dazaralor. So this is not the next raid that's coming. We've seen a lot of previews of that one. This is the raid that's actually coming after that. So it's a ways off until we see this thing. But they have started raid testing it. As I said, it's only 2 bosses. And we got to test the first one tonight. I was really disappointed in this. I think you did a pretty poor job here, Blizz. I'm really sorry to say. I've been super hype about all the new raid encounters that they did in Battle for Dazaralor. There's like one out of the entire raid that I thought was mediocre, which is actually just the first boss, so I'm not even that concerned about it. But I walked away from this one thinking, this is not up to the standard you guys have just done in Battle for Dazaralor. This is not what I'm hoping for. And I'll explain why shortly. I like short raids. I've always liked them. Ever since Onyxia in Vanilla, I like these little raids. I liked going to Gruul every now and again. It was a nice fun exercise, and it was also a great distraction from whatever the current progress you were doing. Change of environment, nice little bit of a delay, a little bit of a break from just spamming one dungeon over and over again when raiding. I really like them. You're probably going to notice immediately that this takes place in the same room of the last boss of Shrine of the Storm, which was... I was like, oh, no new environment at all? Not something else we've discovered. It's just the same room, reused assets. And that makes you go, you are reusing assets, because Battle for Dazaralor takes place in the Horde City. And I understand that's the theme, that's the story, that's what's going on there. But we just had a raid where you reuse the assets that I see every single day. For the most part, there are some new areas, of course, which are really nice. And now we're going into Crucible of Storms. It's like, oh, this is the same place again. Okay. Like, it really takes a twist on what you've just seen when you see it happen again afterwards. You're like, oh, all right. So there is another boss in here that we haven't tested yet. He may have a new area. Maybe the floor collapses. Maybe something cool happens. It might do. Or he might just spawn in this room. You never know with these old god types what they're up to. They might be floating in the darkness or something, and killing the first boss exposes him and brings him into the light. Or something like that, which basically means they can just do this one room. And while I do appreciate that making raids is tough and difficult, and maybe they've come to the idea is that we can pump more raids out if we just kind of reuse the same places that are already in game right now. I really hope they haven't gone that route, because we like the majesty of going into new and interesting environments. Either way, this boss does utilize 2 of the most difficult mechanics any raider will ever come up against. And that is a dark purple room with dark purple bosses that use dark purple abilities. Oh, joy. Oh, joy. Yeah, difficult to see abilities. And what blows my mind about this is they just solved this issue in Uldir. Mithrax, progressing Mithrax, one of the biggest issues people had with Mithrax, certainly on Mythic, is that the cone that you need to avoid, the boss blast, and also the blast that Zalzay does, which is what you deal with on Mythic, you deal with 2 of them blasting across the room, was really difficult to see, because it's a dark purple room with dark purple enemies that are stacked on top of each other that do a dark purple blast. And people just couldn't see it, so it was like, well, this is just annoying, because I can avoid it, I'm not stupid, yet I can't see the goddamn thing. In this case, it's slightly worse, because the bosses aren't very big. I have nothing against small bosses either. I really don't care. Not everything needs to be a large, lumbering beast. We can have small bosses, but small bosses slightly bigger than a Voidwalker, which are also purple, firing off 3 different types of purple abilities that need to be avoided in some way is just a little bit irritating, because you get caught in it. Particularly the mental assault that's fired off by one of the bosses, which is Zakzash the Speaker. Now, fun fact, Zakzash the Speaker is tanked by a ranged DPS. Some of you might be getting excited, some of you old school warlocks in particular. Yes, we are going back to ranged tanking, which is cool. This time, any ranged can do this. There are obviously going to be some classes better than others in terms of defensives, but you don't need to worry about threat, because whoever takes aggro first, as this boss just constantly fires this bolt at you, this aphotic blast, also gains the ability to do massive amounts of threat. So it wasn't really a problem in pulling aggro, as long as you gave the ranged DPS a few seconds to build some aggro, and then even the other tanks could cleave onto this enemy without pulling aggro. So not too bad at all. This blast, if you don't have it refreshed on you, so basically if it goes on anyone else, if someone should accidentally taunt it, and the actual assigned tank doesn't keep getting blasted, they will become mind controlled. So it's very important that you keep that guy alive, because the aphotic blast does a splash. And if you get the debuff from it and it doesn't refresh, which means you're constantly being hit by it, then you will get mind controlled for the remainder of the fight and you'll have to be killed. So the idea is you have this ranged DPS tanking it and kind of maneuvering it. The ranged DPS can move it to make good use of cleave and whatnot, but has to keep out of the way of everybody else, because if the attack that hits that ranged tank splashes onto anyone else, then they'll become mind controlled, or they have to stand in it and constantly be blasted, which is not ideal in any way. So there are a great deal of mechanics here, an actually surprising amount. So I've already talked about Mental Assault. This is where the smaller speaker enemy will randomly target someone in the raid and will fire a blast out, which will just disorientate you for a few seconds. It looks like a mind control, but you break out of it after a few seconds. It's not a big deal. But the main mechanic here is the runes in the room. You can see these three pillars on the floor, which are the 3 runes. Now, at certain health percentages, these runes will activate, and which one activates depends on which one is closest to the boss. So you do get to pick which ones you want to activate, and they all do different things. So there's a lightning one, which instantly kills you should anybody go below 25% health. There's another one that puts up a giant shield, and so on and so forth. So the idea is you pick and choose which runes you want to deal with throughout the fight, in order, because he's going to activate something regardless, so you need to choose which is most ideal order of dealing with these runes. They have separate health pools, but they need to die together. Okay, so a little bit of planning there on the DPS. And we also have ads spawning, which are casting a spell which kills them instantly, so you don't DPS these large faceless ones. They will just start casting something, and then if they finish their cast, they will die, but they're also going to blow up the raid. So the idea is that you stagger interrupts on them so they explode at different times. So you can keep these things alive forever. You just have to choose when you want to let them explode. Make sure that the healing's not overpowered. On top of that, we do have the same buff that you get in Shrine of the Storms. Now, I assume some of you don't really know it exists because it's instantly dispelled or something, but you know of the power buff. That usually goes on the healer if you're doing the Mythic Plus instance here. What this does is it stacks up on you and gives you a mass damage buff, but it also really makes you susceptible to death. Now, good players utilize this in a great way and get all the advantages and then dispel it off themselves, because it can be removed, and then survive whatever might have killed them should they have still had the debuff. In this case, it goes on a player, and they get a circle around them, which means you can spread this buff to lots of people. So you can empower the whole raid with this. Makes it very difficult, though, for the healers to get rid of it before AoE splash comes in. As I said, there are ads that are exploding and all those kinds of things. So having this debuff on when things are going to detonate is a bad idea. In fact, in our testing, we just wanted to see what the boss did and all the different runes. So we just fucked it off and didn't utilize it. But it will be something you want to make use of, certainly at Mythic level and Heroic level for DPS logs. DPS whores will be hunting this down, because you can run to the people who have the buff and get the buff yourself. You're just hoping that the healers do dispel you before something explodes and wipes you off the planet. That would be a really bad situation. On top of this, we have more ads spawning. Luckily for us, they're dark purple. Fantastic. And they don't appear in the boss frame. This really triggers me. We have boss frames in WoW for a reason. So if you're going to have a lot of small enemies that are all bumping up on top of each other, it's not that bad with nameplates, but nameplates have a range, and that range is shorter than what the player's is, certainly as a Moon Kid. So what I mean by that is I can be within range of an ad, but I can't physically see it, and the nameplate doesn't appear above it either. I don't understand why during a boss, if there's an extra enemy in the fight, they should have a boss frame, so you can target them using a different method, because the in-game method doesn't allow you without having to run in. It's a little bit of a tedious annoyance, and hopefully they will fix that or do something along those lines. But they just need to be killed off, and you're constantly kind of just going to be working through this fight, which means it's a little bit unexciting. So not only is everything dark purple upon dark purple and a little bit irritating, like getting disorientated is just irritating, because it's not like a skill thing. It's not like I can't move left or right. The difficulty isn't even be able to see it's coming your way, which is not clever. That's not fun. And then just working through these ads and dealing with the never-ending amount of healing you'll need to do from constantly exploding ads, moving from rune to rune. So I'm sure you can tell with my tone, not too impressed by this. I'm a little bit sad. I'm a little bit sad. It feels like a lot of reused stuff that was nothing here is particularly creative. That's what bothers me. Like, the runes feel like a little bit like what we saw at the end in Argus. with the lightning and stuff like that. I was like, oh, okay. Little disorientated, so just tedious. Looking at the boss is annoying, to say the least. So all around, wasn't too impressed with this one. I didn't see anything here that made me go, this is going to be so cool. And I can't wait to come and kill the live version of this, which is what I did feel with lots of the Battle for Dazaralor bosses. And I'm very excited for that in 2 weeks, but this is not a particularly great start. It feels a little lackluster, let's put it that way. So maybe you guys think differently. Maybe you guys think this looks really cool. I don't know. But for me, it's a thumbs down, Blizz. I'm really sorry. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. I will let you know when we get to test the final boss in here, which is Unat, Harbinger of the Void. I can't help it. All the old god stuff seems so cheesy to me. I'll see you again, boys. Bye-bye.